Hello there, Ray here, and with me is Pingu, as well as Smokey,
Hey.
and today we'd like to show you a movable lazy processing chunk detector with auto reset. What this device does is when the player leaves the area, and this is loaded only as a lazy processing chunk, the machine will detect that and will be able to react appropriately. Then when the player comes back to the area, the machine can detect when the player comes back as well and will move the entire device forward 1 meter all by itself. Although you could use this device to do other different things, we mostly designed it to allow you to be able to drop dragon eggs and lazy processing chunks. This is something I discovered and showed a video about, which I will link down in the description, where this allows you to be able to drop a dragon egg and lazy processing chunk and has special ability of being able to replace the block underneath of it with the dragon egg itself. Now that's why we designed this for, is so we can drop large amounts of dragon eggs without having the player to be able to activate this machine, and this would be able to break bedrock with it. And we have a demonstration going here as well. So we got it marked out where the machine is set right here. And we also got a demonstration with a dragon egg. This is primarily used to drop dragon eggs onto bedrock to break them. So if we move off into the distance and we unload this device, it will be able to detect when we have left the area. And then if we go back, it will also be able to detect that we have returned. And you can see that the device has moved forward since this block is no longer over top of it. You can also see that the dragon egg that was on top of this piston was dropped and it broke the block of bedrock that was here, and same as this device over here. The device originally started with a quirk that Smokey discovered with pressure plates and minecarts on an incline rail to allow the minecart here to activate the pressure plate and then unactivate it and then reactivate it. It's a bit of a quirk, but it does some pretty cool stuff. Such things as like a wooden pressure plate is a little bit slower than like an iron or golden pressure plate. And this can also be used all by itself to create a lazy processing chunk detector all on its own just by having a torch here. Now, this is also applied with string, something that I did, and Lynn came along and be able to make it work with a detector rail as well. And this is what we used in our device, since all these pieces here are movable with slime blocks, and we want to have a device that would be able to move. So here you can see the device inside with the minecart being able to activate this detector rail, and it's pulsing this piston here. So ultimately, Smokey came in and figured out that an unpowered power rail was needed to keep the minecart from sliding off the edge and still allowed it to detect this power detector rail over here. Then I came in and applied his contraption to a fly machine by pushing it in from behind. Then we got Pingu involved and he compacted it a lot. So you can see that he came in and got it moving in a couple of different segments. After he compacted it, he compacted about 3 different times, and it's extremely compact. But you can see that we also got the system which will detect when the processing or when this is in a lazy processing chunk. And ultimately what happens is that when it's in a lazy processing chunk, the minecart is no longer processed, and therefore this cannot be activated by the minecart, and this will just turn off. And when it's turned off, this piston will no longer pulse back and forth. This will allow the observer to stay in the state that's over here, and this would cause the observer to send a pulse over into this piston. This would cause the machine to detect it. So that on its own is the lazy processing chunk detector. Now we also have the auto resetting, which just allows it to recognize when the player has returned back into a entity processing chunk. And the way that this is done is that when this piston activated, it's a slime or it's a sticky piston, and it would pull this piston over here, over here in this slot over here. And then when the player returns, this device here would activate up again, and it would cause this observer to get moved back over here, which would power this piston, and it would move the contraption forward 1 meter. So as you can see, it's amazingly small, only being 4 by 4 by 5, and Pingu did an amazing job at compacting it as well. And he made use of stuff like this instant retracting extension, which allows you to be able to pull the entire piece of the detecting system all at once, even though it's in 2 different segments. And you can see it's quite small as well, but what you would want to do is just hook this up to your egg dropper, which we will probably show in a later video, and then you can just have this automatically reset and you don't have to have the player activate anything. But we do have another device over here, which is a manual reset. So it's a lazy processing chunk detector with a manual reset. So ultimately, once the machine has activated, then you can come in and you can manually reset this by moving it forward 1. We can illustrate this working just by removing the rail. This will allow no power to be sent to the piston here. This is mimicking the same thing as if you would leave these chunks. So if we would just remove this rail, the piston, it retracts, and then this observer activates this piston, which comes over here and pulls this piston in front of this line block here. Now when the player comes back, it'd be just as the same as if this detector rail is placed again, then it activates again, and this observer will cause this piston to push forward, which will come over here and pull the segments back with it, and it eventually pulls all the segments forward 1 meter. This allows you to be able to auto reset the entire system without having the player interfere with it. The main advantage over top of this lazy processing chunk detector compared to older designs like this one here that I made is that the sand design here, there is a chance that you can walk out of the chunk while the sand is falling as an entity, and when it unloads as an entity, the device cannot detect it. Now because of this, it only works maybe like 50% of the time, depending on what kind of clock you have, where this device will work 100% of the time. That's why we have moved over to this type of device, because it's way more reliable than trying to detect laser processing chunks with sand. Some things to note about this device is that you can move the entire thing forward without having to put the player into a lazy processing chunk. This is just by moving the first segment forward and all the other segments be pulled behind. So here we got engine that's pulling the segments, and it's pulled the entire thing forward without having to go into a lazy processing chunk. Another thing to note is that this power rail here has to be unpowered, and we also have to have a top slab in this position here. That way the detector rail will not go around and end up powering that unpowered rail over there. Now this device can be turned in other directions, you just have to mirror it, but it will work just fine. Just gotta remember to set the rails up so that they are in the right direction. This is a very useful device, which we will talk more about in a later video, but for now we'll give you guys the real download so you can be able to see how to build this device up, and we will also provide these other devices as well. There you have it guys, 100% reliable lazy processing chunk detector that's movable as well as it has a auto reset. So if you found this interesting, show me a like. If you'd like to see more crazy contraptions like this, subscribe, and don't forget to comment. Bye.